Hi everybody. This is San Francisco City team with our crowdcast. I'm very happy to be here with you guys today. We have great session by Nimbella and IBM Developer Advocates. And so little bit introduction to if you are the new person to our webinars. We are developer advocates based in Silicon Valley, California. And we do in-person events, and now it's a little bit limited to just online events that we have from time to time. So we are very happy to work with you, with the developer community. We introduce various projects, various technologies. We try to be open for the new technologies that are out there. A little bit of the introduction to the tool. On the right-hand side, you guys can see the chat. Please write something nice. Where are you from? The other thing is that we will present you with the questions. So you can ask questions in the chat window, or in the bottom you will see a small question and answer tab. So we will try to answer all the questions over there. Besides, we will run a couple of polls during our events. So today there are at least 2 or 3 polls that we are planning to do. So please feel free to respond. And there will be green button happening from time to time. Just click on that. It will help you out to sign up to IBM Cloud or get some additional resources. Finally, as the last thing, this is a recorded session. Right after the session is finished, you will see the recording and you can replay it quickly. So without further ado, I would like Leonard Franzel, my colleague from IBM Developer Advocates, to introduce our today's speaker. Leonard,
yes,
it's to you.
Thank you, Marek. Yes, so as Marek said, he and I do events up and down Silicon Valley and elsewhere. Today we do events worldwide, and now and then we meet interesting people who we talk to. And about 2 months ago, we met a group of people from a company called Nimbella that turned out to be really, really interesting. They had a very good technology, and we said that, why don't you join us for a crowdcast webinar? And without further ado, here they are, and they have, as I said, a very important technology that they will demo for you for serverless. And remember to ask questions in the chat window, and I think without further ado, we'll take it away. Take it away, Roderick.
All right. Thank you, Leonard, for the introduction. Thank you, Marek, also for setting this up and getting this started. I'm assuming my slides are in focus, so I will get started. So what I'm going to talk to you about is serverless for everyone, technology that I think is transformative and is changing the cloud computing landscape. In fact, one could argue that the landscape has already changed. And this has been going on for a long period of time, but it's really come to the fore in the last 5 years or so. And if you look at why serverless is key technology today, it's because it increases automation and abstraction, which is something that's been going on in the history of computing ever since the IBM mainframe and Fortran were invented several decades ago. And this shift can be seen by sort of looking at how we've used technology. When we've built applications, deployed them, we used to buy machines and run them on premise. We used to have infrastructure that we would maintain, that we would operate, and that we would pay for. We would pay by the machine. And that's changed over time in that we stopped buying machines, and instead we would rent machines. And this gave the rise to infrastructure as a service. And as we increased automation and abstraction, that kind of automation led to platform as a service. Technologies like Heroku, for example, were widely popular with developers. And what's changed here is not just the shift from buying and operating machines on premise to renting them from the cloud, but how the economics also materialized. So instead of paying money per machine, where you don't buy the machine anymore, you rent your infrastructure by the hour, or you rent the platform and you pay for it as a service by the hour. And the natural evolution of this is functions as a service. With functions as a service, it changes the model from paying per machine or paying per hour to now paying per request. And this is not just unique to functions as a service anymore. There's lots of APIs out there that are as part of the cloud economy where you pay per request, per API call. And this function as a service abstraction is really transformative, and this is what I want to talk to you about here today. So what is functions as a service? And I think the simplest way to think about it is it's instantly reactive functions. You start by writing the function that you actually want to deploy and run as an application. So here I'm showing a very simple hello world function implemented in Node.js. This is it. This is the entire body of the function. And what serverless allows you to do with functions as a service is that these functions that are instantly reactive are reactive in the cloud. The function doesn't run on your machine. It runs in the cloud. And it's reactive because it can receive events. The function operates, produces a result. And there's many kinds of events that this function can consume. The simplest one being an HTTP request. So you have a new API endpoint for your function. You make a request to that API endpoint, and the function runs instantly and then produces this result and then terminates the HTTP request. There's many different kinds of events that you can imagine your function reacting to. A Twitter feed, Instagram post, a file upload, an IoT sensor reading, etc. And the beauty of this model is that you just write your function and you connect it to the events you want it to react to, and that's all you do. In fact, there's the following steps to how you get started. You write a function, just like I showed. And step 2 is you're done. So now you can start enjoying the fruits of your labor. And if you don't believe me, you can try it out at these links that I'm showing on the screen and should be showing up in your chat at the same time. It really is as simple as writing a function, clicking a button, and now you have an endpoint, an API URL that you can use and share with others, and now it's serving your application. In this simple example, it's not particularly interesting, but we're going to do more interesting examples as we go further. The other beauty of this isn't just the simplicity, but it's the built-in scalability. So I hope a lot of you are actually trying out the Hello World link. And what's happening under the covers is I'm not even worried about the service being able to handle all of the load. That's because every time there's an event, a different instance of my function runs, and I'm not worried about where that instance is running. Any of the infrastructure that's related to operating my code. All I did was I created the function. The platform scales up and scales down as more events arrive and as the demand decreases. And that's really gratifying. And it, from a developer's perspective, frees you from having to worry about a lot of operational details. And you'll notice that in my function, even though it's being served as an API endpoint from your browser, for example, you could take that URL and stick it in your browser. I wrote no server logic. I didn't say map a particular route and then listen to a particular port and then deploy the server instance to a machine or provision the infrastructure. I just wrote my function. There's no server logic. So I wrote less code. And this goes to my earlier point about increasing automation and abstraction. I don't want to have to worry about that. Moreover, I didn't just not write server code. There's no infrastructure in my example at all. And if you're trying this out in the playground, you're seeing exactly the same thing. You can play around with many different functions, not just in Node.js, but many different languages. And you're not worrying about any infrastructure. And you're getting a lot of the benefits I just talked about. The simplicity of the experience, the ease of use, and the scalability that the cloud is built for. In the playground that we host on the Nimbella platform and in IBM Cloud Functions that you'll hear about more later, you can do this with many different languages. Node.js, Python, Java, Go, Swift if you're into mobile, PHP because that's still a very popular language, Ruby, and many others. So this is serverless. And the beauty of serverless is that allows you to just focus on what you want to innovate on, and you can deliver it faster. And so if this little introduction into serverless doesn't wow you, and you're not sort of still interested in adopting serverless, let me show you a few more benefits of why serverless is interesting. I talked a little bit about the ability to write functions and then hook them up to many different events. And in cloud infrastructures, there's many different events, and the ecosystem of events is very rich. So what you're doing by adopting this kind of programming model is the ability to make your computation reactive and actionable to lots of different input. Moreover, the economic model is pay per request. If my function is not very popular and nobody's actually running it, I'm paying no money to the cloud provider at all. This is kind of a utility-based model. If the lights are on, I'm paying for my electricity. If the lights are off, I don't have an electricity bill to pay. It's very similar with compute. The scalability I alluded to earlier is very important, right? If there's 1 user or 1,000 users or 1 million users, I want implicit scalability from the platform. I don't want to have to worry about that, because that's kind of operational overhead that increases cognitive load and gets in the way of my innovation and sort of being able to translate an idea from conception into implementation. The last point is added security, right? If you write less code and you rely on the platform to do more for you, and not just the platform, but the entire infrastructure stack, then there's a lot of things that I get for free. Not just securing the operating system, but maybe even dealing with kernel patches. You know, when Heartbleed came about a few years ago, the entire cloud rebooted and many people didn't even notice. When there are dependencies in my runtime that need to be patched for exploits, the cloud provider does that for me. I don't have to do it. So I do less and less, and this goes back to the original point. Increasing automation, increasing abstraction helps me focus more and increases my productivity so that I can innovate faster and faster. So these are some of the serverless benefits. Now, this is the rosy part of things. There are some challenges. I'll talk about one of them in particular a little bit later. To give you a sense of the concurrency and scalability you get and cost, this is using IBM Cloud Functions price calculator. You know, your functions that you deploy to many of the clouds, not just IBM Cloud Functions, you get out of the box 1,000-way concurrency. So your function can run up to 1,000 instances at any given time, and that's just what the cloud provider gives you. That's amazing scalability, and it's incredibly cheap. You know, for some functions of various sizes and a particular kind of execution time, you know, you can run 1 million operations. It would not even cost you 25 cents or $0.25. So this is very transformative in that it's putting not only superior developer experience at the hands of many different developers with varying skill sets, but it's putting immense compute power in their hands as well. Serverless isn't just for the hobbyist and the developer who's sort of a solo developer or part of a rogue team. This is actually transforming entire organizations. And I've got here a number of corporations that have adopted serverless and have published use cases, whether it's using IBM Cloud Functions or one of the other cloud providers. And some of these names you should recognize, or you might recognize rather. And you know, what's unique about these things is that this technology has been transformative in the enterprise and done by very small teams. You know, small teams get together, they can entirely rewrite the application stack for the enterprise. They can deliver it faster, they can operate it cheaper, and they can innovate faster. And so this is transforming and leading a shift in how enterprise adopts and migrates to the cloud. And one last point about serverless and why, you know, if you haven't started this journey, why you should, is that it's growing at an exponential pace. So in 2015, roughly 5 years ago, there were about 2 billion serverless functions a day executed. And today, actually a little bit, this data is probably closer to 3 trillion now, but the exponential growth is 5 times. So more than 2 trillion functions are being invoked a month in terms of adoption of this programming model. That's a huge amount. And if you consider that serverless is still in its early days, this is kind of like the mainframe and Fortran days for serverless in cloud computing. This is a tiny fraction of the compute that's happening in the cloud today, where the majority is still being done with heavy lifting of infrastructure and renting VMs. So I think there's a huge future for serverless. Hopefully some of these points intrigued you about serverless and got you to ask the question, well, how do I get started with serverless? And moreover, how do I do this painlessly? And I think what you're going to see in this talk are 2 prime examples. IBM Cloud Functions, of which Marek will talk about and show you an example shortly, and Nimbella. Nimbella is a technology we built after looking at the serverless landscape and talking to many developers at many corporations over an extended period of time, understanding where the future of this technology is going. So part of what we've done at Nimbella, and we've called the company Nimbella for a beautiful cloud, is focusing on a developer experience and helping enterprise in the cloud with their migration from legacy applications, monolithic applications, even microservices and containers, to this new world of serverless computing. And by serverless, I don't necessarily just mean functions as a service. There's a broader definition of serverless today, which largely embraces this notion that I do less as a developer and I offload more to the cloud provider. One of our key properties with Nimbella and what we're trying to deliver and innovate on is this ability to do serverless in a cloud agnostic way. If you look at the major cloud providers, whether it's Amazon, Microsoft, Google, IBM, they have extremely efficient clouds. And what they've done in terms of cloud computing is that essentially commoditized compute. And so Nimbella is a way of sort of commoditizing all of these cloud providers and providing a way and an abstraction so that you can build serverless and adopt the same fundamental mentality of running and focusing on value and doing it in a way that scales, delivers some of the cost efficiency and security of functions as a service itself. I mentioned earlier that serverless isn't all roses. There are some challenges. One particular aspect of serverless computing today, when you're using functions as a service specifically, is that you tend to have to write functions that are stateless. That is, you have to, as a developer, write additional logic that externalizes that state to an external store. And this is true whether you're operating on key value data that might be transient and you actually want to cache. It's true if you're doing object storage, where you're uploading large files and you're manipulating large files. And it's true if you're operating with databases. And part of Nimbella's value proposition is very deep integration between functions and state management, so that you can build applications in a way where they are more reflective of the real-world scenarios that one tends to develop in the enterprise, and provide a gentle migration path from those applications to the cloud. And if you're interested in learning more about Nimbella and how we actually do some of the state migrations, stateful aspects, we have a number of demos available on Nimbella.io that you can go and play at, including stock trading applications where you have transactions, chat applications that's multi-chat, and some others. One in particular is optical character recognition, which I think is fun to play with. So you can upload some images with text and then play with, and then it get translated to text, and then you can have them also translated to audio. These are available from our website. So IBM Cloud Functions, I think, is one of the best programming experiences for functions as a service. And it's based on, you're going to hear more about this and sort of get a hands-on look and feel for this from Merrick just shortly. I think one of the advantages that IBM Cloud Functions offers is it has a programming model that was built from the start to essentially make the programming experience easier. We're probably not going to get into a lot of those today. You can learn more about those at IBM Cloud Functions if you just Google that. But the underlying technology that's powering the service is Apache OpenWhisk. And Apache OpenWhisk is available on GitHub. It's an open source project. We open sourced this technology actually out of IBM Research maybe 5 years ago now. And if you have heard of it, great. If you haven't heard of it, check it out and maybe give it some GitHub star love. It was built for the enterprise. So when we built this technology, it was shortly after Amazon announced their function as a service called Lambda. And we built it for the enterprise. And this launched as IBM Cloud Functions. And today it powers a number of enterprise offerings in the serverless space. So some very big ones like IBM, Adobe I/O Runtime, Naver, which is a corporation out of South Korea, and Nimbella, which I'm going to talk about later. We have a number of contributors from many different companies and organizations, and lots of different contributions over the years. So I'm going to hand it over to Merrick a little bit so that you get a feel for IBM Cloud Functions and how you create your first cloud function. And I'm going to come back and talk about how you can do this even faster. Eric, are you taking over?
Yes. So let me get ready. So we are going to have a little presentation first from our colleague over here, Leonard. Give me the slideshow. All right, I think, Leonard, you see the screen? Do you see?
I see the screen, yes.
Yeah, I think I have to focus on it, don't I? Let me just make it in the focus. All right, so take it away.
Can I switch here to also screens? Or can I?
Yeah, I'm going to move the screen forward.
Okay, if you move the screen forward then once.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about here is COVID-19, and you may wonder why we do that, but this is part of our emphasis here on a hackathon that is going on worldwide at the moment as we speak, and that we wanted to tell you a little bit about. As you know, COVID-19 is a very dangerous outbreak of disease. And the question is, what can we as developers do to help out here? And if we switch the screen again, we can see that we also have a climate crisis that is actually connected to the COVID-19 outbreak. And here we have a large number of developers who can join the IBM Call for Code initiative, 2020 Call for Code, to try to make a difference. And it's all free, doesn't cost anything. You can form your own teams. And what you can do then is to write your application. It gets judged. I'm one of the judges, actually. And once you get judged, you have a chance to make $200,000, which is a nice thing to have, some of money to have in your pocket. But also you can make a difference here, and you can learn a lot of interesting things. We have here at the down on the lower right, IBM.biz Call for Code. If you click on that, you can see if you're interested in joining. And if you are, you can begin to make a difference. And so lots of really, really interesting applications coming out of this initiative. So we can move forward. And then we are going to start now on signing up to the IBM Cloud. We got a number of questions here in the chat. How does serverless relate to the IBM Cloud? And it is a very close relationship because you can actually launch serverless functions in the IBM Cloud. Roderick mentioned that as well. And Marek, we want them to click on this URL, right? See if they can.
Yes, you can either click on the URL, or just copy it over, or I'm going to pass the like a more friendly URL in the chat window. You can use the green button on the bottom, or this little link over here in the chat window, so you can kind of use it for your use it as well. So these are all things, and I think that leads us to our hands-on. So let me just show quickly what we are going to use. So sign up to IBM Cloud, or sign in if you have already the account. Let me also share with you guys the link for our labs, so you can use the labs along with what we are going to do now, and also Roderick is going to comment later on with Nimbella Cloud. So it's just a very short lab. So I'm using this this documentation over here. Let me now change to stop the presentation for now. I need to do it somehow over here, I think. Let's end the show. All right. So these are the labs that we are doing, and so you need to skip to lab number 1, and lab number 1 shows you how to work with the example. So first step is to get what's on visual recognition service. So a little bit of the introduction of IBM Cloud. So if I open over here IBM Cloud, I hope you guys see it. Let me just confirm with my screen. I'm never sure if you guys see what I see. So using the link on the left would allow you to join IBM Cloud, and you would see a screen like that. So it will be a dashboard, and in the dashboard, this is my light account. So what does it mean? It means that I'm using an account that is increase the size. So this is the account that is in the light tier. So I'm using on the free of charge services. So if you click on the left, it will allow you to go to the infrastructure and functions as a service. So this is the part that you want to go to. And when you start creating, you can start easily creating things. So let me show you how you can do it. So you just start creating, and you will get the basic implementation. But if you go to the catalog, then you can combine some of the services from the IBM Cloud, and you can either search the catalog or go through the product. There is 190 products that you can use from, and there are some featured ones. And I'm going to use one of the services in an AI catalog. So if I write, this is a visual. So you will get the visual recognition service. So you get the visual recognition service. There are plenty of AI services, so you can just get them yourself. And in a nice space, I can just pick up the service. It's going to give me the pricing and the location. So I have Dallas over here, and it's a free tier, so I can create the service, and I can call it like with today's date. So or it's a Nimbella, so our partner over here for this workshop, and I can call it with the date. So 20/20/04, and then we will have some tag, and I can now just simply create. So that's the first part of the creation of the service. Very easy, and as I said, it's free of charge. You can classify about 1,000 images per month. Every month is recurring, so you get some access information, and then you can create the credentials, and you can create the new credentials. So I will call it also Nimbella. So Nimbella, and I will create the new credentials just for purpose of this lab. So you can kind of follow up with me, and you need these credentials to be present and used in the lab. So we are going to use this API key later on. So just remember that. I will make the copy of this entire screen. I will keep it in my clipboard, so just give me a second. I will just copy it over here, the hidden screen. Command copy and command. So these are the credentials that you guys are going to use, and now we can go to the lab. So we created the service. As you see, we created the service. We copied API key, and now we can work with the function. So we will need this function over here, and we will need it in our lab. So I'm also going to copy this. This is the function code that you can use. And now we are going to go to our function. So very quickly, Cloud Foundry functions, overview, getting started. And, let me go there. Start creating. So just a little bit. Start creating, and so we can create an action, and it asks me to create the package, create the default package, and the action name would be test, or maybe no, Nimbella visual recognition. And we are going to choose a language, which is, in this case, we are going to use Python. And we are going to create. So this is, immediately we get a very simple action. We can invoke it right away. So it's going to return to us hello world. So it's very basic stuff. But as you remember, we just copied over the piece that was in our lab. So let me just paste it over here. So it's a small application that takes advantage of the visual recognition library from Watson Developer Cloud. It uses this visual recognition service that we put. We just need to provide API key, and we need to provide the image URL. So one of the things you can do with the serverless actions, when you're a developer, you need to set up the parameters for, let's say, you would use it with various keys and so on. So I'm going to use the parameter over here, add the parameter, and it's API key. And the parameter over here is the one that we used before. So the API key from our action, let me just copy it over. So this is the API key I got before. And so we have it. And now if we go back to code, so this is our code. So we have the API key done. And image URL is one of the things that you would pass as the parameter. So this parameter would be invoked over here. And if we look in our lab, one of the parameter we want to use is this puppy image. So let me just copy it over. And let me try to show it to you guys. So I will copy over this puppy image. So this is the image I'm going to create. And so I will invoke a small image. As you see, this is, or you don't see, but it's going to be an image URL. The second part is so each is a JSON input, and I'm going to copy over my puppy. So this is the puppy image. And this is how you can really pass the information every time you are passing. So one parameters that you create here, the second parameters you create when you invoke the action every time. So you can have like a various type of the parameters. So let's keep our fingers crossed. If everything works, we should get the response. So now the action is being first provisioned. So we are compiling the action, building the container. And the container goes when it's running. The function is calling the puppy. One more thing usually I'm doing with the images, I'm looking for Robert Lewandowski, who is a Polish soccer player. So Robert Lewandowski. I must admit that Leonard never protested and didn't pick up any Swedish players. So I'm keeping my Polish Robert Lewandowski over here. So he is a player back from Poland, and let me see if I can get his image over here. So if I press, so I need to copy image or open the image, copy image address, and if I put the image address in our parameters over here instead of puppy, so you can call your functions with various parameters every time. So it might work. Hopefully it works. Not always. Sometimes images are too big or whatever. So. Okay, we got some response. So we have the athlete, contestant, person, and usually you get if you run this action against the visual recognition service, you get some more details. But this is one of the scenarios, use case that we use with the serverless. So using AI services to augment or improve or tag the images in the back. So that's all part of the presentation that we have done. And you can, if you have any challenges with that, I will just share with you guys a link to our Slack, so you can we can join us, and if you have any questions and you would like to share some ideas or ask the questions, just join us there. And I'm stopping my presentation. Close video. And I am getting it back to Roderick. Roderick, it's back to you.
Thank you. All right, I should be back with my slides up.
Yeah, your slides are back and in full screen.
Great. So thanks, Merrick, for showing IBM Cloud Functions. I think this was a quick way of looking at how you can use external services and build a function. What Merrick didn't talk about is that you can actually take that function and turn it into an API endpoint and build it as part of your application. And so what I'm going to show later, a bit of contrast, is can you go serverless even faster? And by faster, I mean, what more friction can we take out of the system so that you can get to the point of creating and being able to deliver code with quicker agility and greater productivity? And part of what I'm going to focus on is something we call the Nimbella Commander. And this is a way of consuming serverless from Slack. And so if you're a Slack user, then this might be something that's interesting to you because it brings in some of the social elements of serverless into a place where some people spend a lot of time. If you're not a Slack user, we do have a Nimbella version of Commander for Mattermost, an open source version of Slack, or equivalent to Slack, and we're coming out with a product for Microsoft Teams in the near future as well. What I'm going to focus on here is Slack Commander. And if you tried the playground earlier, it was a way for you to get started with creating serverless functions in one click from your browser. Now I'm going to show you how you can do it from Slack. And this isn't something you would do for real development, but it does have some interesting use cases that I'm going to describe shortly. And to get started with Nimbella Commander, if you go to nimbella.com, we have an Add to Slack button. You click it, and what you'll see is, it gets installed into your Slack workspace. It welcomes you and gives you some helpful commands. What I'm going to show is a series of screenshots because I don't want to have to constantly switch back and forth between my Slack and the presentation. But at the end of sort of showing somewhat static images, I'm going to do a live demonstration as well, taking the example that Merrick showed and turning it into a Slack/command. The ability to essentially run it right out of Slack and do visual tacking from your Slack workspace. It's kind of fun because then you can share it with others and you can play, you can sort of see how funny the AI sometimes can be in terms of its labeling. So what Commander allows you to do is to consume serverless from Slack, and that essentially means that you can take cloud APIs like the Watson Visual Analyzer or other kind of services that might be offered on IBM or other clouds and bring them into Slack by wrapping them with serverless functions. Additionally, you can create your own. And in fact, this was something that I'm going to talk about shortly, also related to the pandemic that's ongoing and affecting everyone. But I'm going to start with a simple example. So this is showing my Slack prompt and the execution that you see when you type that command into Slack. So you type /nc for Nimbella Commander, and then create hello. And what that's done is it's create a function for you, a boilerplate function that then you can go on and edit by clicking the edit the code link. But instantly, right after you've created this command, you can actually run this function. So you type /nc hello, which is the name of the function that I just created, and you get a default response because I haven't edited the function, but it exists, it's in the cloud. And you'll notice this is the same kind of simplicity I alluded to earlier when I was talking about my hello world example. I just wrote code. I don't have any infrastructure. I don't have any server. I haven't dealt with Slack and sort of figuring out how to get my / command into Slack. And this is what makes this simplicity and power really interesting and intriguing from developers' perspectives. If you click the edit the code link, and I'm showing that in the snippet on the right, then you get to see the code, the function that you actually was generated for you. And there's some boilerplate right at the bottom, lines 22 to 27. And what that function main is doing there is taking the actual response from your function and it's doing some canonical wrapping that you might want to do for error handling. And then on lines 10 to 15 is where I'm generating the response that you saw earlier in Slack. This is the default response for a newly created command. So if I edit that and I say example, hello webinar viewers, save, and then run the command again, you instantly see that the function was executed. And you're going to get to see, the fluidity of this a little bit later. But this is just to sort of set the context and give you a context for sort of understanding the technology. And so what you have here is the ability to essentially develop at the speed of innovation. Do you have an idea? Are you collaborating with someone in your Slack workspace? Do you want to get together and sort of start building? And this is exactly what happened to us. And we started building commands, and then we wanted to share them. So we came up with a way of doing that called command sets. And this is on GitHub. And you can find a number of command sets that we have there, not just for doing things like Watson AI Analyzer and the Cloud Function command sets I'm going to show earlier, but doing things like billing and looking at your cloud bills and cloud infrastructure costs across different providers. And you can visit GitHub to look at more of this information and read some of the documentation. But one of our team members at Nimbella was interested in sort of tracking the COVID contagion that's ongoing. And so there were public APIs he wanted to consume, and he built this right out of Slack and essentially shared his command set. It's available on GitHub, again, as open source, and you can install it into your Slack and start using it. And so this is showing you here how you install it. You run the Nimbella Commander package installer. You can think of this essentially as turning your Slack prompt into your terminal and doing the equivalent of npm package install or brew package install or some other popular package installer. And once the command set is installed, now the command is available for you to execute. So I ran this a few days ago, and so this data is already outdated. And so you can say, Nimbella Commander, show me corona stats in the US, and it prints you the information. And you can see all this code. It's out there on GitHub. And the ability to sort of just create, and then as this was running in our workspace in a shared channel, we were providing feedback on what data should be shown, how it should be shown, whether it should be filtered by state, etc. So it led to lots of interesting discussions, all of which was eventually realized in code. And as the code was updated in GitHub, the function essentially just picked that up, and every time you ran the command, you got new and new features. It's pretty powerful. So because we're doing a webinar with IBM, we thought we should build an IBM Cloud command set. So we did, and thanks to Satya, who's on the call, he built a number of command sets, who's in the chat rather, from our team. He built a number of functions for interacting with the IBM Cloud. And you install these just like I showed with the corona stats. You can do in Nimbella Commander, install IBM. And what I'm going to show you are 3 examples interacting with the IBM Cloud Function service, using the language translator service from Watson, and also using the Watson Tone Analyzer. Installation, just like I've shown before, CSM install IBM, and you're ready to go. And now you have a number of command sets available in your Slack prompt. So the first one is, suppose you've gone to IBM Cloud Functions, you've built a number of functions. You want to see which ones you have. So you can do, you can call the actions command, and it lists the functions that you have in your cloud, what limits are set on them, and what runtime is being used to run those. You can even invoke the function right from your Slack. So invoke return params, here's the name of the function, and you're passing it some parameters. And there's a result. So return params is an echo function. It just takes the input here, a JSON object that has the field message with the value hello world, and just returns it back exactly as is. So it's very, very neat sometimes, particularly if you're in operations, you've deployed an application, you might get an alert, something is wrong. Then you might run, for example, some of your health tests right out of Slack. Is there something wrong? And then get immediate confirmation and share that with your Slack team for operations. Or maybe you're debugging a problem and you want to be able to sort of show others what you're seeing. And this is a very powerful way we found in our company of how we're able to use this. And we've gotten this kind of feedback from others as well, that ability to sort of interact within Slack, shared among others, and be able to sort of innovate, address problems, debug, think, and create new ideas has been pretty powerful. It has been rewarding to see. Here's another command to look at activations. So Marek ran his function a couple of times, and you got to see at the bottom of the screen there was some output like logs, etc. This is the corresponding view. You can say, show me all of the activations, and it shows you which activations they were, how long they took, and then other metadata. And then you can filter even further. I think we have a few more commands which I'm not showing here in the interest of time. Here's the IBM Tone Analyzer. And effectively, the way to think about this is Tone Analyzer exposes an API, just like the Visual Analyzer that Marek showed exposes an API. So you just need very little code to actually wrap that API and invoke it from Slack. And so if I think of this as consuming APIs from a huge ecosystem of APIs that's out there across many clouds, and bring them into one environment where I spend time, where I collaborate with others, it becomes really, really empowering. So this is showing the Tone Analyzer. I wrote this, ran it last night. Serverless sounds too good to be true. Is it magic? And the computer doesn't have high confidence. I have absolute confidence. So with a confidence score of 1, I think my joy is very high with this statement. I don't think it's magic, but I think it's very empowering. IBM Translate is another service that you could use. So you can run this, give it a sentence, and then specify the language you want to translate to. So FR here at the very end of the statement is for French, and it translates it for you. Another interesting aspect of this is, suppose you don't like the way the service or the API that you're using produces its results. The nice thing is, because this is code that you write, you can modify the response and do whatever you want with it. So yesterday we were talking to a partner of ours, and they described a use case where they have a Twitter feed, and they get Twitter feeds that have a lot of noise in it. And what I'd like to do is be able to modify and remove some of that noise so that they can focus on their customers who need more attention. And they were complaining that they can't do this with the Twitter Slack integration because it's closed. It's not available for them to actually be able to modify. And so we're working with them to essentially develop a capability where they can consume the Twitter API and then modify and customize the output that they want in Slack so that their marketing team and support staff can react more quickly to the customers that they need to provide attention to. So this is a really powerful way of consuming APIs and creating your own APIs and then sharing them with your team. So what I'm going to try to do now is a live demonstration of Nimbella Commander. And I'm going to use the same example that Marek showed with the visual recognition. So I'm going to switch to my Slack for the next few minutes. All right. So here's my Slack screen. And just to show, I'll make this bigger. I hope the font is readable. So this is running the Corona stats command, and you can see some output for US. So let's switch to actually, how do I develop a new command? And so I've saved myself a little script just so I don't make any mistakes. So I'm going to create a new command called labeler, and this command accepts a image URL. In Marek's example, when he did this, there were 2 parameters passed to this function. One was the API key. The other was the actual image URL. So the API key is a secret. And so the way we do secrets and secret management is a little different here. I'm going to talk about that shortly. But first, what I need to do is create my function. I'm going to call it labeler. And I want to prevent others from running this command without passing the parameter. So when I do this, just like I showed in the slides before, you create a command. I can actually try to run this now, and because there's boilerplate code there. But in the interest of time, I'm going to open this in the browser. And you see this is some JavaScript template. Marek's code was in Python, so I'm going to switch to Python. Whoops. And I'm going to paste in Marek's code. So this is the same code Marek had in his lab that he showed earlier. All right, so I'm going to save this function. Now I'm almost ready to run it, right? Because this is using a service, the Watson service, I need to provide it with an API key. And so the API key is a secret. I don't want to pass it to my function every time. And so the way to do that is I create a secret. And the secret creation is done outside of Slack because I don't want Slack to know my API key either. So I paste this, which I get from the IBM Cloud. I get an encrypted string, which I add into Slack. And now I'm ready to run the function. So, whoops, that's the wrong link. I apologize. Let's run the correct command. All right, so this is an image of a dinosaur. And if the command works, it's a little slow on the first iteration, but it'll get faster. So there's the image of the dinosaur, and it got labeled, oddly enough, as a giraffe. I thought that was amusing. Here's another image. This is my favorite cat picture. And so, see, this picture got labeled as a cat. I'm going to show you one more feature of Commander. Jamie, if you're listening, can you try to run this command? Sorry, Jamie, I didn't give you permission to run this command. So one of the things we've built into Commander is the ability to control who has access to the functions that you're creating. Because in some cases, if you're doing things like sharing infrastructure costs or operating infrastructure, you want to provide guards against who can operate that infrastructure and who might have access to that information. So there's explicit entitlement built into this. And by default, only I, as the one who created the function, can run the commands. But I can grant Jamie the privilege of running this command. So I'm going to do that now. Jamie, can you try again? And there it goes. The Slack doesn't unfurl the same picture if it's been recently unfurled, so you don't see the picture here. But you see that the first time he failed, the second time he succeeded. So that's Nimbella Commander. This is a very convenient, easy way of getting started with consuming and using serverless functions. I'm going to switch back to my presentation now to conclude, and then I think there'll be a little bit of time for questions. So my view, and I think this is a view of a lot of people who have used serverless, a lot of developers, once they get started with this experience, never go back. And that's because serverless is fundamentally easier. It's faster for you to develop. It's more desirable. I mean, I think there's so many features here that you get for free. Why would you want to give those up? So the benefits are immense. And I think a lot of this essentially culminates to serverless is inevitable. So if you haven't started your serverless journey, you really should. And it starts with just one function. And you can believe it for yourself. Go to our functions playground or sign up for IBM Cloud Functions and write your first function, exposes an API endpoint, and see how fast and convenient it is. I just showed you the example here with Nimbella Commander. I wasn't timing it, but I think that was under a minute to the time when I actually got the function up and running. Okay, I cheated a little. I had Merrick's code to copy and paste. But it really is that fast. And if you try it from the playground, you can have the same kind of experience and ease of use as you did from Slack. So you can start today with IBM Cloud Functions. You can also try it with Nimbella Commander, where we try to bring a lot of this power and capability to the place where it integrates with the tools that you use. And moreover, part of our mission and what we're fundamentally trying to transform at Nimbella is making the cloud easy, making it accessible. There's a lot of power in computing in the cloud today, but it starts with having to sign up for an account, having to know where things are, having to navigate massive catalogs of services and offerings. That's great for the cloud providers. It's not great for developers. And so part of what we're doing is really making this cloud migration beautiful so that developers of varying skill sets and capabilities can really take advantage of the power of the cloud. And lastly, I think with serverless, the increased focus that you get really leads you to just one aspect: innovate. You can innovate faster, you can deliver faster, and that's because a large part of the headache is now somebody else's problem. The infrastructure is no longer your headache, it's somebody else's burden. And so with that, I'll conclude and take some questions if there are any. But before I do that, again, I want to thank everybody who attended. I want to thank IBM, Merrick, and Leonard for hosting this. And a special thanks to the Nimbella team. Many of them are in the chat helping to answer questions for essentially sharing as part of this mission and helping us deliver on this beautiful cloud experience. If you're interested in Nimbella Commander, we're offering it free for 90 days for all attendees. This unlocks a certain number of features and capabilities that you don't get with the free tier. That is, there is a free tier as well, that if you're not interested in the pro tier, you could use that. But for at least for 90 days, if you go to the link that's available there, you can sign up and be part of the promotion. Thank you.
Roderick, it was great to have you on the screen. I see that Leonard disappeared. So guys, you can ask questions. There are 3 polls over there. Please feel free to answer them. And let me see if there are any more questions in the ask question. I see that which cloud are you using? That's the question from Leonard. If you can answer, Roderick, on behalf of Nimbella, maybe.
Sure. So Nimbella can run across many clouds. The deployment that most people will be using today is on Google Cloud. So you can think of this as developing your serverless applications against Nimbella, running and hosted on Google Cloud. part of our mission is to be cloud agnostic, so we can actually deploy and run Nimbella on top of Amazon. So part of how we do this is to normalize on top of something called Kubernetes. It's a technology that allows us to manage containers and underlying services in a uniform way across clouds. And so what that gives us is essentially the ability to do this for all clouds that have managed Kubernetes services. That includes IBM's IKS, Azure's AKS, Google's GCP, which we're using today, GKE, and EKS from Amazon.
Awesome, thank you. Leonard is back with us, so I think he can monitor the chat if there are any more questions. Leonard, are there any more questions?
There are some questions, but not direct questions, more general statements.
Oh, all right. So I'm there is how will this work on IBM Cloud? The question from Robert Cheng. So I would just simply say
I responded to that already, Marek.
Yeah, there is this Leonard's response, but also you can just sign up to IBM Cloud and check for free. They are free here to use the services. There is a 400,000 gigabyte seconds that you can use, and you can test your applications. And beyond that, you will need to have a paid account if you want to use more per month. So try it out, and you can test them. They are based on the Apache OpenWhisk standard as Nimbella solutions. So do we have more questions? So the question didn't appear, but there is going to be a recording of this right after the call. You can join us on Slack. We can. I have shared the Slack code. And Leonard, maybe you would like to speak also about the. I don't see any more questions, Roderick. So if you allow us, we would like to have just a couple closing statements about our meetups and stuff. So
okay. Do I need to do anything, or you got it?
Yeah, we got it. So almost we got it, because it's always a challenge. So just open here. So I'm going to share the screen again. Share the screen, and then I can kind of talk to it. Focus on screen. And this is our screen from today, but this is our lab. And let me open the meetup page. If we go to meetup, you can see that this is the meetup today. We have another meetup later this afternoon, and then maybe you can speak about that. What we have done. Right.
Well, that's an AI meetup. We will work on IBM Cloud using AI functions. So that's a very popular meetup that we have. We have lots of other meetups as well. So take a look at what you see here on the meetup page, and just join us. And you know, we enjoy talking to you, and hopefully you enjoy what we're telling you or what we're trying to talk about. And if you have any ongoing startup programs going on, we'd like to hear about it. We may be able to give you some advice, or at least just talk about it. So we want to stay in touch, and we really enjoy doing these meetups, which are a lot of work to present material that people will like. And therefore, it's important that you give us your feedback. Do you like something? Maybe you don't like it that much. Maybe it's too advanced for you. Maybe it's not advanced enough for you. Those are really some of the questions that we are struggling with sometimes. You know, how to get the information.
Yeah, the most important part about this meetups is that we want to share the technology with you. We want to invite speakers and companies like startups like Nimbella, and having CTOs to speak to you guys like Roderick. Roderick, thank you so much for being with us today, and all the team that is in the background that is working and sharing with you the links and material. It's a lot of work. But we want to respond to your needs. So tell us what you guys want to do, what are your challenges, what you want to work with, and we try to adjust. So on that, I think there are no more questions. So I will close the meeting. So thank you very much, Roderick and Leonard and Nimbella for being with us today. And this meeting is recorded. So so the recording will be here with you shortly. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.